Welcome to the Elokus podcast. This is class number 6 in the fourth discourse of Bishasha Hegdimu. This is in the discourse called Naso Rosh. This is class number 6. We are in the middle of chapter 12 in the overall chapters of the entire book. Okay. And yesterday or in last class, we were discussing the idea which he's proving again, the general theme over here, which is going to span the next couple of Maamorim, the next couple of discourses, is all going to follow the one point to clearly illustrate that the Oiros, the lights of Atzilus, of the world of emanation, the light of the spheros are not completely pashut, they're not completely simple with utter simplicity. And his proof that he's bringing over here, in addition to the proofs sourced in Kabbalah, he's now proving it just from a logic that a pure infinite light could not settle and reveal themselves in finite vessels. Because if they would reveal themselves in their pure infinity, the vessels couldn't handle it. So therefore, we have to say that the lights are already compromised in that sense, that even the lights are not utterly and completely pure and infinite to the fullest sense of the meaning of infinity. Remember, when something has a definition, that itself is limitation. So when we say something is purely infinite, means it's beyond any definition, which means it's utterly simple and undefined. Now, if the lights would be utterly undefined and simple, then the vessels that are limited would not be able to host them, facilitate them, and definitely the lights would not be able to express themselves, which is what Or Pnimi is, that the light expresses itself and reveals itself into the vessel. It unifies with the vessel, and that could not happen. Now, yesterday's class and today's class is all almost like a parenthetical thought. He's saying, and even though there is an opinion that says that because of this very argument, there is the opinion of the Ramak, that the lights are, which proves from this that the vessels are not really limited. They're not gvul. The vessels, the kalim, the vessels of the spheros, of the attributes of the world of Atzilus are not gvul. They're not limited. They're only koyach gvul. They're only the power of gvul. And that would therefore negate the whole thesis over here. It's not a thesis. It's this whole proof in which we're saying that the light has also limitation because the vessel is limited. But once we remove the limitation from the vessel, then we can free the lights up and let the lights be completely infinite. But he says, no. Why? And this is where we were holding. He's proving that even according to that opinion, you have to say that the vessel has some kind of limitation. In that what? In that, number one, the vessel has already a coloring, which means it is either, meaning a flavor, a certain style to it. And that, even if we say the vessels are not limited, we cannot remove the vessel from having character. That's the whole idea of the vessel, that it gives character, kindness or discipline or compassion or whatever that flavor is. Everybody agrees to that, even the Ramak. And that's why the spheros are spheros, are attributes. And in addition to that, even in terms of when we're saying that we're trying to say that they're not finite, meaning to say that the energy that passes through them and that they express as the light goes into the vessel and then comes out the other side, and as a result of that, this energy, the point that the Ramak is making is that it's infinite energy that's being pumped through the vessels that are flowing in Atzilos through the vessels, but even that is not utterly infinite. It's not infinite kindness to the full sense of the word. Why? Because everybody agrees that the vessels at least impact the light, that when they will move past Atzilos, they will not be infinite. Because that's the idea of the vessels, is to limit the lights, that they should later be able to be conditioned to go down into the finite worlds. And we know that the energies that are flowing, the energies of all the sphirot, which make up the powers, the creative power of all the worlds, are all within limitation. That's why the worlds that they create are a limited world, a limited universe. And that's because the lights are limited. How do the lights get limited? So good, we'll accept that they're not limited in Atzilus itself. Over there, they're infinite, but when they leave Atzilus, they're already limited. And that goes to prove, or that shows, that even in Atzilus, that's the last point we're learning, that even in Atzilus, they're also limited. Because if they would be utterly limitless, then what would stop them when they would go out from then flowing into the lower worlds also in a limitless manner. That is for sure a given, that the light, when it goes into Bria, in the world of creation, and definitely in the world of Yetzirah, the world of formation, and definitely when it comes into the material physical world, which is in the world of completion, the world of Asiya, it's for sure limited. What affected that limitation? If initially the light is coming from an infinite God and it's an infinite light, somewhere it's being tempered with, somewhere it's being controlled. Where is that happening? It's happening in the vessels of Atzilus. According to the Arizal, as we spoke yesterday, the lights become limited already in Atzilus itself. And according to the Ramak, who says it's only Koach HaGvul, it's not Gvul, it's not limitation, it's only a power to limit. In Atzilus itself, it's still limitless, but when it goes into the lower worlds, it becomes limited. But that too is because the light has been softened and weakened in Atzilus. Why? Because he's going to prove it. He's going to compare that to true infinite light that infinity that has not been tempered with at all. Real infinite light, he says, goes everywhere without and doesn't remain. It's not relegated only to one world. It's present everywhere in a limitless fashion. And what is that? So this is where we're holding right now. He's going to say that there is Or Ein Sof, but there is levels in Or Ein Sof. Or Ein Sof means the light that is limitless. But even when we say limitless, there's gradations in that. And that is as follows. The Or Ein Sof that is not Atzilus light, the Or Ein Sof that's above Atzilus, the pure Keter, infinite lights that's beyond Atzilus, they are present uniformly in all four worlds. It's present in Atzilus. It's not of Atzilus. It's from beyond Atzilus, but Atzilus can't block it. So it flows. It's present in the world of Atzilus, but it's also present in the world of Bria and in the world of Yetzirah and even in the world of Asiya, which means we are floating in infinite light. It's just that to us, it's as if it doesn't exist. We're oblivious to it. We're going to speak about that actually later in the Maamor, just maybe in a class or two. We're going to get to that point and talk about that, why that is or how that is. But whatever it is, however, the Or Ein Sof, from God's perspective, the Or Ein Sof is here present in our dimension as well, in the same exact way like it is in Atzilus, because nothing changes it. It remains above any screening, any filtration, because it's truly Or Ein Sof, and therefore nothing can diminish it. However, what we call the Or Ein Sof of Atzilus, which is what? The Or Ein Sof that goes into the Kalim, that goes into the vessels, merges with the vessels, and then exits those vessels, and being impacted by those vessels. But it's still Or Ein Sof, according to the Ramak, as we said. It's still infinite, but yet its level of infinity is already checked. It's not unchecked. In what sense? As we said earlier, it's infinite in Atzilus, but when that very light is introduced into the next world, it is already flowing only in a limited fashion. So you see that Or Ein Sof itself, there is the Or Ein Sof Shalamayla Atzilus, that's above Atzilus, and the Or Ein Sof that's of Atzilus. And Atzilus, again, is the highest, the first world. The difference between the two is, or one of the differences, is that the Or Ein Sof that's Shalifnei Atzilus, that's beyond Atzilus, is present everywhere in all of its infinity. And the Or Ein Sof of Atzilus is it's also present. It also flows down through all the worlds, but with limitation as it goes into the lower worlds. And why is that? The only difference is you have to say that the Or is not the same quality of light. It is already a diminished light. How did it get diminished? By the Kalim. So what do you see from here? This is all to prove that the Kalim are pretty much, although we removed real limitation from them, but they're still within the zone of limitation. And since these Kalim are within the zone of limitation, again, we can't lose the main point. the question now, even according to the Ramak, the question will always be, how can they host or Ein Sof? How can they really host light? If we will go by the argument that the lights have no limitation at all, the Oires of Atzilus, how can they be held by Kalim that are limiting, which we've just proven that they're limiting? That the Kalim are limiting powers, and they therefore have limitation. And all of this leads us to the conclusion that we have to say that the oiros that even the lights, even before they go into the kalim, are not pure or Ein Sof. Because if they would be pure or Ein Sof, then they could never go into vessels that are limited. That's the nekuda. That's the point. But let's now, inside, he's going to develop this idea. How, first of all, he's going to differentiate the lights of Atzilus and determine that they are only infinite in Atzilus, but they're not infinite in the worlds beyond Atzilus. They get limited as they travel downward. And he's going to juxtapose that with the Or Ein Sof that's above Atzilus, that is equal and present everywhere in its infinity. And then the next point he's going to prove is that, and then he's going to show us that there are times, and there are, very interesting, that there are times when the Or Ein Sof of Atzilus does breach the barrier of Bria and pour in. It's almost like an ocean that breaks through the levees. I remember, this is just in my head from years ago when it was the Hurricane Katrina, and in Louisiana and over there by the coasts of New Orleans, there was horrific devastation because they have these levees over there that are meant to hold the water back, and because the hurricane was so ferocious, the levees broke and the ocean came and flooded the towns and villages and caused horrific death and destruction. So there are times when Atzilus spills over into Bria Yetzirah and floods the lower worlds, but he's going to explain that's not the regular, and in order for that to happen, it's only when there is a spiritual hurricane, which means there's a revelation in Atzilus from beyond Atzilus. It's just like the ocean. The ocean when it's regularly regulated in its regular state, obeys God's commandment that it should stay within the certain borders, and where should be dry land and where should be ocean. If there is a particular powerful storm, then the ocean changes and the ocean becomes so violent and so potent, so powerful, that it breaks the regular order. Similar to that, he's going to explain that we do find at times that the Or Ein Sof of Atzilus does extend itself into Bria and even into Asiya. And he's going to give two examples, beautiful examples of that. But that's not due to Atzilus, that the water pressure of Atzilus does not do that. You need the water pressure to be much higher. And that's because the lights that are higher than Atzilus suddenly flood Atzilus. And that's what empowers the lights of Atzilus to break all borders and come down lower. But the normal state is that it's not that way. And that is an indication and a testimony that the lights of Atzilus are limited. And why are they limited? Because the Kalim of Atzilus are a limiting force, because they are limited. Even if in Atzilus they don't limit the light, but they are already a force of limitation. Okay, that's the idea. Hope it's clear. Let's read inside. V'gam achar. Okay. Let's just go back a line of Isha. Since the light affects, since the kalim affect the light, that when it would go outside of Atzilus, it should be in a state of limitation. If not for the limiting power of the world of Atzilus, they would be in a limitless fan, or gam chutz le'Atzilus. In other words, really, the Or Ein Sof, as we say, if it's not limited, then it's infinite, then it's purely infinite, then it should go everywhere. What makes it slow down that it's only infinite in Atzilus, but outside of Atzilus it's not? That's because the Kalim. But what is that improving? That's proving that Shegamba Atzilus Payalamei Zahagbala. That's a proof that even in Atzilus, the light is already weaker. V'hu, what does that mean? In what sense does it make a Hagbala? A Zagbala means somewhat of a limitation. Shagam She'ein Seiflus Pashtusan. Even though there is no end to their spreading out, according to this opinion, that the Chesed and the Spherois, as they operate in Atzilus, are in a pure, infinite manner. Nevertheless, their expansion should be only in Atzilus. Ukenoida, as it is known, remember we said that he's going to just juxtapose it, or he's going to compare it to Orein Sof that's not filtered at all, that's everywhere. Kenoida is known as Hefresh, Bein Orein Sof Shalifnei Atzilus. The difference between the Orein Sof that's prior to Atzilus, which means a much higher quality of Orein Sof, Bein Orein Sof Shabatzilus, and in contrast to the Orein Sof of Atzilus. When we say Orein Sof of Atzilus, we mean the Orein Sof that gets processed in Atzilus through the mechanisms of Atzilus, which are the spheres, that which passes through the Kalim. The Orein Sof Shalamaylam Atzilus, the Orein Sof that's not fed through the Kalim, the Orein Sof that's above Atzilus, that expands into all worlds, and it's everywhere. We're going to see later. It's just that we're not conscious of it, but it is present here. The Orein Sof Shabatzilus, however, the Orein Sof of Atzilus is relegated only to Atzilus. Hushemispashet rak ba'Atzilus. It expands in its infinite manner only in Atzilus. Loy chutz la'Atzilus, but not outside of Atzilus. And doesn't mean it doesn't go there at all. It goes, but once it travels through, it goes through powerful filters, and the kindness, for instance, becomes finite kindness, and the compassion becomes finite compassion, and everything is downgraded immensely. And in order that there should be the revelation of now, is there ever a time that Atzilus does reveal itself outside of Atzilus, in the lower worlds? Does that ever happen? So he says, yeah, that could happen, but that's due to a hurricane. There needs to be a spiritual storm, meaning from the power of Atzilus itself, because the Kalim are limited and therefore limit the light. It would not have the capacity to flow over into the lower three worlds in its infinite state. It cannot do that. It needs to be charged with a charge that's higher than Atzilus to make that happen. When does that happen? In order that there should be a revelation of Atzilus, of the world of Atzilus, the world of emanation, which is an infinite world, infinite godliness in the three lower worlds, Bri, Yetzir, and Asiya, who al Yadei is only through Gilui or Elyoin, only through a revelation of a higher light, Shalamaylam Atzilus, only through a revelation that's beyond Atzilus, that empowers Atzilus to flow into the lower worlds. Ukemai, and the example, see that I gave the example of an ocean flowing over. Similar to this is Kemai Bekriyas Yamsuf. It's explained that's what it's a little bit of the opposite type of a situation where we spoke about water just going outside of its boundaries and flooding dry land. Here is where the sea, by the exodus of Egypt, when the sea split open and the Jewish people walked through the passageways into the sea. The explanation that is given is that the sea represents Atzilus. Atzilus is called the sea because Atzilus is just like the sea. The ocean is a hidden world where everything there's life there, but everything is hidden, and we can't go. People can't survive in the ocean. The idea is that if we would go into the infinite light of God, we would disintegrate. We would drown in God's infinity. So the ocean represents, in general, Alma Diskasia, the concealed world, which in many places is explained is the worlds when they're still infinite, when they're still one with God, the levels of Atzilus. That's the ocean. Dry land is what? The space for us to exist, the space for the lower creations, for those who are listening to our daily Mashiach, a short mimer, the classes that we give, the 5-minute clips, we're talking about this the whole time, how these concepts, these ideas, how Atzilus is considered the ocean world, and Bria, Yetzir, and Asi is considered the dry land. Now, usually these two worlds are mutually exclusive. They don't converge one with each other. Each one respects its boundaries. But by the splitting of the sea, the sea became dry land. What that means is that there was a revelation of sea life. Simple meaning like this. What happened during the time of splitting of the sea? Land mammals, which are human beings, which are land mammals, land creatures, were able to walk into the sea and see the ocean world. So if we translate that into our experience, it means that the ocean revealed itself to creatures that are not in the ocean. That means Atzilus, which is the ocean, revealed itself to creatures that are in Bria, Yetzir, and Asiya. Okay, we spoke about this in the Maayor. There's two opinions of what happened by Kriyas Yamsuf. Does it mean that creatures of the lower world went scuba diving into the ocean and were given access into the inner hidden world? I don't mean literally scuba diving because they had a passageway, but it's the same idea. We entered into Atzilus. The lower worlds were given a tour. Were taken on a tour bus and drove into the mysterious world of Atzilus. Or as explained, and that's one opinion. Another opinion is, and this is more like with the flow of the Maayor, is that Atzilus lowered itself down, spilled over, and revealed itself in the lower world. Whatever it was, it's explained in the Midrash, in Midrashic teachings, that the experience of the splitting of the sea was the greatest prophetic experience ever. As we got to experience godliness, the hidden mystical world like we've never at any other time in history besides the giving of the Torah. It was basically God exposed, heaven exposed. It was spectacular. It was greater than what prophets would dream of. Every shmegegi, every little guy was able to experience it because basically God spilled over the higher realms. Heaven spilled over into earth. That's the idea. So how did that happen? Why didn't heaven remain within its boundaries of heaven? Why didn't ocean remain in its hidden world? Which usually the ocean very much adheres to God's command on Tuesday, stay within your borders, and the ocean did not and went in and allowed itself kind of to be revealed in a lower space. That's because there was a powerful eastern wind. It says that when it describes the splitting of the sea, it says there was a wind blowing all night long. Now, the way the Torah refers to the wind is that it was a ruach kadim, which in the literal translation means it was blowing from east to west. It was an eastern wind. However, the word kadim also means primary, a primary wind, primordial wind. So Kabbalah explains that this wind came from kadmoino shel olam. It came from what precedes all worlds, even Atzilus. A wind means it was blowing. God himself was blowing. A revelation, a force was unleashed from the realms that are beyond Atzilus, even higher, because Atzilus is also a world. It's infinite. It's still one with God, but it's a world. Here, a wind opened up from beyond Atzilus. And what did it do to the ocean? It whipped up the ocean. It made the ocean wild, so to speak, and caused the ocean to spill over into dry land, which is the concept, even though physically it's hard to see that it's not. It's the ocean split, but the concept is that the ocean revealed itself to land creatures, to the world of the dry land. So the ocean stepped out, the sea stepped out of its boundaries, and it went beyond the boundaries. For that to happen, you need a power beyond Atzilus. Like by Kriyas Yamsuf, there was an attachment. Atzilus, of the world of Atzilus, in Biyah. It was an unusual event where there was an attachment of the world of Atzilus with the three lower worlds. Bria, Yetzir, and Asiya. Ksiv, says over there, that God was leading the sea, Beruach Kadim, with the eastern wind. That there it says Aza, a powerful east wind. He doesn't even bring that word. And it's explained that what does Kadim mean? That's precedes the world, above Atzilus. So that's one proof that Atzilus doesn't have within it the ability to be truly limitless, only when it's charged with a charge that's beyond Atzilus. So this is to prove the idea how Atzilus light is to a certain degree already limited. And he gives another example, another beautiful example. all of our souls originate in the world of Atzilus. Jewish souls are all piece of God from above, our godly soul. As it is a piece of God from above, we originate in the infinity of Atzilus. However, our consciousness, as we experience ourselves, even when we are not focusing or operating from our shell. We have a shell consciousness, which is a dark soul coming from the klipa called the nefesh habahamis, the unholy soul. If you learn Tanya, you learn about it. Even when we're not in that dark space and we're tuned into our holy consciousness, our higher soul, it's still not an infinite experience. We're not tuned into the infinity of Atzilus. In other words, we're not experiencing ourselves as divine, because to be infinite means to be divine. We are creation beings. And that's because our soul descends down, and as it descends, for all of us, it goes through a powerful filter or a powerful screening, and that screening alters our consciousness and places, or you might say superimposes limitation. Inherently, we once discussed this in an earlier class, we are still, at our essence, we're still an infinite soul. But in as much as we experience ourselves, self-experience, and anything, all of our resources and all of our powers all becomes almost like we metamorphosize from a butterfly into a caterpillar. The other way, instead of the metamorphosis from a caterpillar to a butterfly, we go the reverse. We are a free soul that can fly as beautiful butterfly. That would be our sign of the way our souls are in Atzilus. But then we become kind of a limited, constricted, and caterpillar-like. And our soul goes down and becomes far more constricted. That's the story of most of our souls. Because when we're moving from the world of Atzilus into the lower worlds, that transition restricts, shuts down the infinite dimension of our soul. So we become severely compromised. And that's the way God wants us to operate till Mashiach comes, when our divinity will open up. But until then, we have to operate within this compromised state. However, there are tzaddikim, there are and righteous people, saintly people. Not everybody. Even amongst the tzaddikim, it's not everybody. There are certain super souls who, to them, when they come down, their souls are not affected by the powerful filters that exist. They pass through those filters, and it's almost like their souls are so powerful, it blasts through, it cuts through. It's like the sea splits before them. It's like it just breaks through the barriers, and they descend into a body, and they remain with their divine consciousness. And that's the idea of a Rebbe. They're godly beings. They're not limited. Anybody that looks at the Rebbe and you can see his limitlessness, hours. There's no end to the Rebbe's standing, hours, giving dollars. A 90-year-old man just giving and giving and giving, and no sleep and no. It's beyond. That's an example. You can open up your video after we finish learning and watch the Lubavitcher Rebbe. You're looking at a physical human being, and who within him is imbued a soul that has not changed and not been compromised. And these are only the super souls, the biggest tzaddikim, big Holy Baal Shem Tov, Chabad Rabbeim, the other tzaddikim, also the big Talmidim, the students of the Baal Shem Tov. These are people whose you saw that they were limited, they were limitless even in their physical bodies. Now, but for that to happen, it says that the souls of Atzilus themselves don't have the power to come down here and remain the same. It's because they are empowered with powers that are even above Atzilus, that empower them and enable them to come down from Atzilus in this world and not change. Let's see. And so too in souls. When at times, only very, very rarely, comes down Neshama d'Atzilus, a soul of the world of Atzilus, Bibiyah, in the three lower worlds of Bria, Tzir, and Asiya, Like it's explained elsewhere, sheyesh neshamas, that there are spectacular souls. Shenikra le'ema pargud, that the pargud is this partition, gets torn open before them. In other words, they're not processed through this filter and impacted by the filter. They come down and they do not metamorphosize. And in order for that to happen, it takes a higher light from above the soul, from the Or Ein Sof, to kind of land the soul, to carry the soul from Atzilus down. It almost basically has to fly on God's wings to come down over here without being impacted by the limitations of the world. And that is, meaning Atzilus doesn't have that power. You need Or Ein Sof beyond Atzilus to accomplish it. That's because the Or Ein Sof that's above Atzilus, Hu Mebchinas Ein Sof Mamish, that is literally Ein Sof. That's really Ein Sof. The Alkain, and therefore Yachalias Misham, and that's why it has the freedom. It has has that flexibility. Because it's limitless, it can bring Atzilus down. It can affect even a lower level, which is Atzilus, and drive it into the three lower worlds, even though Atzilus itself, based on her own definitions, cannot do that. It's kind of it has a power beyond it that drives it down. Masha Eikin Oira Atzilus, which isn't the case of the light of Atzilus itself. It became constricted or limited through the vessels. That its ispashtus, its expansion, should be only in Atzilus. And this is going to lead, and not lower than Atzilus. And this is all a conclusion to the idea. So therefore, it's showing us that the light of Atzilus is also limited. And that's because the kalim are limited. The vessels are limited. And which leads us back, which he's going to say right now, if we're going to say that the lights of Atzilus are truly infinite, how can they then go into vessels that are limited? This is the final punchline. How can they go into vessels which are a power of limitation? And how can the vessel gain power over it if it's truly infinite? So therefore you have to say that the lights of Atzilus are not truly infinite, or else the limited vessels would not be able to restrain them, and the limited vessels would not be able to hold them. And all of this is proving that even the lights of Atzilus are already limited, have some limitation. They're not pure or Ein Sof, as we shall see. Okay.